So we're going to spend a bit of time going through some of the recent updates to Test Modeler, and we're going to pick out 3 bits in particular that we're going to focus on and kind of run through some of those new functionality. There has been other new functionality that's been covered, and we'll show you where you can find out about these new features at the end. And there's lots of nice new documentation and videos associated with them as well. So you can go through in your own time, you can have a go, have a play, and obviously if you have any feedback, feel free to ping us an email. We'll be more than happy to chat about that as well. So the first feature that we're going to look at is the ability to preview test data. So this is basically a capability where directly inside Test Modeler, you can now come in and you can view all of the test data that has been generated. You can preview it, and you can directly see what data is being set and created from the model. Now, this is particularly useful, and we found this useful even within our own kind of models that we create, is to be able to directly see that data, to be able to preview it, and also to be able to debug it as well to understand where the data is being set and if the right values are coming through, and also just to get an understanding of the different data that's being produced. So here I have a model. It's not the most complex model, but I'm sure you can appreciate there's some different aspects going on here. So this is for deciding on a credit application, whether someone should be approved or someone should be rejected. And inside here, we've got different decisions that are being made, which dictate kind of the state that we end up in. So what is the age of the person? Do they own assets? What's their salary? And what's their credit history? Now, behind this model, we have different data variables that are being set, like the age, the application state, the credit history, the credit limit we're going to assign, their salary, etc. Okay. And obviously, as we're going through this model, we're setting these different values. Some of them have got some data generation functions inside. Some of them have got some static data. But as we're going through these different blocks, you'll see we're setting these different data values with different assignments, as you'll see here. And as we get at the end, we've got their credit history. If they are approved, we're also coming up with a credit limit that we're going to assign based off of a formula here. Now, if we come in and do a generate, we're obviously going to have our different scenarios running through this model. In this case, we've got 20 paths that you'll see across. If we now hit the run button here, what you'll see is there's a new option to preview test data. If we come out and hit this preview button, what that will do is it will go away and it will produce the full data table for each of these 20 paths. And you'll see here we've got those columns that are matching here. We've got the age, we've got their credit history, we've got their credit limit, we've got their salary, and we've also got the state at the end whether they end up approved or rejected. And we'll see here some reasons that have been populated as well. And we can obviously download this, so we can come out of the CSV file and we can utilize that elsewhere. Now, this data table isn't just for data that's been set in the model. It could be going out and it could be doing resolves, inside external systems, and we can pull that data back up as well. Okay, so this is a really nice way to be able to preview the data, what the data looks like after we've gone through our model, and what that matching data is for each of the scenarios that we're producing in the different paths. We've found that to be pretty useful, and we've had some very good feedback so far from customers on them seeing a very positive impact on them having this feature as part of their environment. So the next area we're going to look at is around mainframe automation. So we've got quite a few customers who are using Test Modeler to automate, their mainframe testing. And one of the areas we've looked to make it a little bit easier to get started is to incorporate an automation framework inside Test Modeler. So the users who are coming in who want to do some mainframe test automation can come directly inside Test Modeler, spin up a new project, and almost immediately start to do some automation for their mainframe system. Okay, so this is really for anyone who has any kind of project, which is where they're trying to automate some kind of mainframe. It could be an AS400, it could be something else. But if you've got some tests that are currently manual or you're struggling with your automation, this feature is a nice way to get started, have a little play around, and start to get some automation rolling. Okay. So if I come out here, what we have got is, this is an AS400 instance that we've connected into. We're inside our emulator here. We're just on the login screen. We can come out and we can log in, and that's obviously going to take us into our kind of menu page where we can go through firing off different routines and entering different parts of the application. Okay. Now, within Test Modeler, what we have firstly done is we have set up a new connector to go and connect into our mainframe instance. Okay. So you'll see here we've set up a new connector type, and we've just given our connection details. We can go a little bit more advanced if it's using SSL. We need to give a device name, or we can switch the different terminal types that we're going to utilize to make the connection as well. Okay. Now, within our configuration here, what you'll see is that we have a built-in framework for automating mainframe activities. And what we've done in here is we've just defined that we're going to be connecting to this specific mainframe instance. Okay. Now, what this then means is we can spin up a new project, which we're going to do here. So we'll call this our mainframe example. And for our automation framework, we're going to be using the Quick Start mainframe framework. So we'll hit save. Now, this has obviously created a new project. We can come into the Explorer view. If we go into components, you'll see there's a folder here called Actions. If we look at that Actions folder, you'll see we've got an action pack here with mainframe commands. Now, these are just some of the mainframe commands that we're supporting out of the box. These are fully extendable, and they can be added with custom Java keywords and any embedded logic that needs to be added as well. You'll see here out of the box, we can enter text, we can enter various PA and PS keys, we can enter, we can home, we can wait for changes, we can take screenshots, etc. Okay. So just to see this in action, what I'm going to do is just create a new model here. We'll create an automation model. And what we're going to do is just literally go through that login process, and we're going to end up on this screen here. Okay. Now, to do that, we're going to have a start block initially. Okay. We're then going to navigate to our mainframe actions. The first thing we're going to do is enter a value into our username field. Okay. So we're going to enter our username. We're then going to enter our password, which again was for demo. In between, we need to tab to this new field. So let's do that. Switch to the password field. We're then going to enter our password. And at the end, we're going to hit the enter button. We will wait a certain amount of seconds for us to actually perform that authentication. So we'll wait for our change. We're going to enter login. And at the end, what we'll do is we will capture a screenshot. Okay, so this is just modeling out a very happy path, just so we can see this in action and how quick it is just to get something off the ground where we're automating. So we'll put that there. We'll do a generate. We obviously get one scenario, which is a happy scenario. We'll then come out and we'll hit generate automation code. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to spin up and generate our code, kind of standard test modeler stuff. Then what it's going to do is go away, generate code into our mainframe framework. And then what it will do is actually go away and execute these scenarios against the mainframe application that we're connecting into and testing. You'll see here we're getting some messages as that's going through performing these different scenarios. If we come out here and we look at the results, we'll see we've got a test passed. And what we'll see is that we've got the screen at the end here, which is where we've come through and we've logged into, which is our end state of our model. Okay. So very quickly we can go from nothing to spinning up a new mainframe connector to actually having some automation, there very quickly. So this is great if you want to do, a quick proof of concept, or you want to try out some mainframe automation. This is absolutely the way to get started, and you can see some results and actually see some automation running incredibly quickly. The final one we want to move on to is our SoapUI integration. So we've been working with quite a few customers recently who have some legacy tests inside SoapUI, mostly kind of API tests or testing some kind of service. So what we have done is we've built an importer from SoapUI that can help people either migrate or import their SoapUI assets into Test Modeler to get started with model-based testing using those assets they've already spent a bit of time creating. Okay, and the idea here is that either we can help you move your SoapUI test into Test Modeler and you can carry on using SoapUI in the back end, or it may be from the perspective that you want to move away from your SoapUI tests into something a bit more open, like Rest Assured or Postman or some other kind of API-based automation framework. So if we come out and take a look here, we have a SoapUI project. Okay, this is just from their standard demo pack. And within here, we have a new endpoint that's been created, which will go and get new accounts. Okay, we'll see here, if I open that up, it's going to go to the local host, it's going to go to our account creation, and it's going to go and get different accounts. We've got another one here which will go and register new accounts. So this is going to go and hit our account creation page, and we've got two parameters here that we can set. We can set a username, a password, and we're going to perform a post to hit this registration form with. And what we've also got is an existing test case here in our test suite, which has two test steps. The first one it's going to do is go and view our form, and it's then going to go and send our account details. Now, if we come into Test Modeler and we create a new project, so let's create one here. We'll call this our SoapUI import project. Hit save. We're going to create this into a Rest Assured based framework. So we'll select our API automation. See, we've got that new project created. What we're then going to do is come into import, go to more. And if we look under the drop down here, what you'll see is that we've got a SoapUI import option. And this is where we can come out and we can specify our SoapUI project file, which in this case is an XML file. So we'll come in here, we'll navigate to that project file, we'll hit import, and this is going to go away and import the SoapUI test suite that we've got. We come back out, we'll see we've got a new project folder that's here, sample REST project, which has come from what we've just imported. If we take a look in the interfaces, we'll see we've got our account creation resource that we produced. And we'll see we've got those two endpoints that were inside our project here for SoapUI for creating a user account and also viewing the account registration. If we hit the generate button here, what you'll see is that we have a Java file, which we have created, which is going to go away and it's going to either hit our endpoint to register a new user account, or we're going to view the account that's been created. That has taken those definitions that you see here. We have inside our SoapUI project, these two for doing the post and doing the get. And because we now have these inside Test Modeler, we can come out and we can convert these to any of the automation frameworks that Test Modeler supports and convert those over. The other one we've got here is we've also brought in the test suites. In this case, there's only one test case, which is our account creation one, which goes through our two test steps. And in this case, we've actually gone away and we've produced the model. Obviously, we've only got one test case here, which has two steps. It's not the most exciting thing in the world. But what we will do from that is we will go away, we will produce the model, we will merge any assets together. And what that then means is we can come out, do a generate, and we can populate that automation code into whatever automation language needs to go out. So this is a nice feature. If you've got any SoapUI tests or a SoapUI project, which you're looking to convert, or you'd like to bring that into Test Modeler so you can start overlaying all the power of modeling, in terms of visualization, maintaining test cases, etc. This is a great starting point. So on that point, Tom, I guess if there's any questions so far, be a good time to answer them, or we can move over to Hugh to go through test data.
Yeah, cheers, Hugh. Cheers, James. Sorry, but yeah, we've got a question from Nigel. Can we use Test Modeler to create API tests directly?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of automation frameworks out there for API testing. There's things like SoapUI, which obviously we just looked at. There are open source or open technologies like Postman, which is very popular, or things like Rest Assured or PowerSoft. There's an awful lot of different API technologies. We have integrations with them in Test Modeler. And what that means is we provide, a very easy to use user interface that people can come in and they could say, we want to go and do a get, a post, a put, a delete on this specific endpoint. You can model them out with incredibly rich data variations. And that is going to formulate really nice test cases, which can be pushed out into these automation tools. I think the other piece, which is probably, overlooked a lot for API testing, is actually more kind of end-to-end testing, functional API testing, where you're not just hitting one endpoint, but you want to hit multiple chains of endpoints connected together. And the nice thing about Test Modeler is obviously once you've modeled something once, that's a reusable component. When it comes to creating these much richer automation scenarios, it's literally a case of just dragging and dropping and connecting these building blocks together. So yeah, absolutely, we support API testing, but we take it additional steps further where you can do some pretty complex things very quickly and easily inside Test Modeler.
Cool. Just got time for one more question for you, James. This one's from Derek. Why would you generate for a tool versus direct? For example, for Postman or SoapUI?
Yeah, great. So, I mean, what we typically find in these tools is that, you're almost always single threading. If you want to go and create a test in one of these tools, you have to say, okay, I'm now going to go and do a get on my users. I'm now going to go and do a post and create a particular type of order, which is going to go through my e-commerce system and, add some items to a shopping cart. And then I'm going to do another post, which is going to go through my checkout process, et cetera, et cetera. And what you'll typically find is that, you can parameterize these, you can make them data-driven, but typically, you're always going through creating that one test case and chaining all these pieces together with very small deviations between them. The power of modeling is obviously you can come in and you can create, a pretty sophisticated model with lots of data variations very quickly, and you can push that out. And, all of a sudden you've gone from creating one test to actually creating a covered, a high covered set of test cases, which are covering lots of deviations across both positive and negative scenarios. So that's kind of one benefit. The other benefit is actually through test maintenance. If you think about it, you've actually got a lot of assets there that you have to keep up to date. The whole point of modeling is everything's very centralized. Okay, if something changes, it's literally a case of going into one model, updating that model, and everything that touches that particular component can be regenerated and updated. So I think it's kind of threefold. We see a dramatic reduction in the time spent designing test cases because you're creating a model which is much quicker. We see a big impact in terms of test coverage. In terms of increasing test coverage, creating a much better set of test cases to test that particular application. And then the third piece is actually in terms of maintainability. We see a dramatic reduction in the amount of time that's spent maintaining test cases and keeping them up to date by using a model-based approach. So hopefully that helps to answer that question.
Thanks, James. Yeah, that was really detailed answers. Thank you. But yeah, we'll have more time, more Q&A time at the end to answer any more questions. But yeah, I'd like to hand over to Hugh for the test data automation product update. So if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen, Hugh.
Sure. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah. We can see it.
You can't have testing without test data. start with a little bit of an advert. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is our integration with a product called Windocks, which we've worked with them for a while, but we've now pretty much fully integrated it into the test data automation framework, and also you can call it from inside Modeler. So what is it? It's virtual database management. When would I use it? You can get your own copy of a database in seconds, and this could be a 2 terabyte database. It doesn't really matter about size. You can basically take a 2 terabyte database and create your own copy of it in, maybe 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on the different type of database technology you're using, but certainly in a very short period of time. You can then use it, throw it away, start again, roll it back. Imagine trying to do that with an Oracle e-business suite or something like that. Why would you use it? Users not stepping on each other. If you're busy developing or testing or building a training database or whatever it is, and you go and do your thing, and then suddenly someone else comes into your database and starts messing around or rolls it back or does something to it, or does a close, runs a series of account closes, then you're in trouble. The other one, really cool one, is the ability to compare before and afterwards. And I'll come to that in a bit. And then also, once you have a nice sort of starter database, you can just create loads and loads of regression packs and then just run different regression tests in parallel. And that absolutely drives CI/CD if you can just actually have your own little databases spun up. So there's a little diagram. Basically, you have a series of database files, and the idea is that you're using Windocks to create these virtual databases. So let's just go and have a quick look. So what we have sitting inside Modeler, you will see a couple of new things. If you go into, once we install the Windocks server for you, which doesn't take very long, we did it in about less than 25 minutes, you'll see a new Windocks. And this allows you to build a base image, which you start from a database that you're already using. So in this case, I've got one called, this is on my machine, and it's just got, I've just picked up this little sample commerce database. So once I've created my base image, I can then start creating containers. Now, containers are basically, each one of those is kind of an individual database. You can have up to 256 containers, I think, per server. So it's pretty easy. So basically what I need to do, quick form. So say I'm going to say test new API2, pick my base image, sample commerce, container name, let's call it new API2, because that's what I'm working on. It's a SQL Server database. How many containers do I want to contain? Create 3. What database do I want? Within an image, you can have multiple databases. Which schemas do I want? Get database metadata. And let's create a diagram as well. And I'm going to execute that. Okay. And that will fire off a little job. Now I'm going to come back to that in a second. But in the interest of time, I have created one a little bit earlier. Now, what you'll see also when you have the Windocks implementation is you'll have a series of special lists. Now, these lists contain, for example, lists of images, and these are synchronized up anytime anything happens on the Windocks server, so you don't have to go and look at the server or anything like that, or use another portal. And what you'll see in here are containers. Now, I created one called new load API1, API here, API. And what it's done, it's actually created 3 containers. Those containers are actually databases. And if we go and have a look at our databases, you will see here we have one. And this contains all the information which is populated for you, like so. And what we've done, we've just created 3 of them. Why not, eh? Now, the reason we're doing 3 of them, I want to use this one as my base because I'm going to use it for some comparison purposes. This one I'm going to give to the DBA, who's going to add in some additional columns that we need to put in. And this one I'm actually going to do some, there's some testing on. I'm actually going to give it to the developer to do some testing. Now, if we go and look at what those actually look like, what you'll see is you end up with a little, in this case, we just got to copy over the URL string. And bingo, you've got a database. So there's a database. Fabulous. And here's another database. And you can have loads and loads and loads of these, and I can go in and basically edit this data to my heart content because I'm not going to bother anyone else. Create another one. Use shoes. 6. I can just create some data. Bingo, done. So I've created my own data in there, and you just basically just tell your CI/CD pipeline or tell your testing environment where to point. Maybe create some configuration file, and you've got your data sitting like so. So first things first. Now the DBA has been beavering away, making some changes. Now inside test data automation or master data management, we have the concept of definitions. Oops, sorry, wrong portal. And here we've got one called Sample Commerce 2016. And you'll see here that we have captured, let's have a look at version 1. You'll see here we've got customers, and it's got a bunch of columns, and we capture foreign keys and et cetera, all exciting stuff. Now, what we can also do is we can then, as we move through versions, so in fact, what's happened here is the DBA has been working on, I think, number 1. So they've been working on API 2-1. Whoops, here you can see the other ones, sorry, coming in. These are the ones we were creating in the background. So here we have the one the DBA is working on. And I've just actually created a new version over here. So we have version 1 and version 2. And what you can do actually is you'll say, well, what's happened here? And if we just click on the little compare versions, version 1, version 2, process that, you're actually going to get a little description of all of the changes that have come in. And what we've actually done here is been putting a lot more work to do with update times, writing in currency codes to the countries, base currency codes, we're adding in URLs to the suppliers, etc. So it's a very easy way. Now, obviously, this is, you can get this from an API as well. So you could do loads of things with this. You could create DDL and the like to be able to do that. Okay, so very straightforward. And within seconds, you've got yourself your own little database, and we can keep track of the version management. I was surprised actually talking to the guys at Windocks. Very few people actually do a good job of actually managing the versions, across their own databases, and this just kind of does it automatically for you. Now, the other interesting thing you could do is you could say, well, so actually, sorry, one last thing before I leave is if you look at these lists. So say later on we're looking at some containers, and I say, well, okay, I'm done with those. In fact, I was doing some training with 8 students on some SQL the other day, and I gave them all their own database because they wanted to do some inserts. I could basically just come in here and pick like this, and you'll see you can come here, you've got various different commands, and we can basically pick up anything from these lists. So I could just delete the containers if I wanted to, and they would just disappear off the server. So anything that's more list focused, you can just execute from. Anything which is more form focused, you just come in and come over to here to do that. Now, there is also in the product thing called compare, and this is compare database data. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to tell it what to compare. Let's go to that one, and we're going to compare it with this one, I do believe. And all that's going to do is it's just going to compare the work that the developer has done. I click on execute. I won't do it now, it only takes a few seconds, but we interest of time, and you'll find to compare database data, and if you come in here you can actually look, and we'll create you a little, and here's some compare results. Oops, wrong one. Let's just go back to my compare results, excuse me. Martin's just dropped in for me. 1 second. Let's just look for my compares. Filter, compare. That's the one I want to look at. And here's the compare results. And let's just close that other one down and try one more time. Let's try close that one as well. And here you can see we've added some data. And what we've done here is we've pulled out the values that we have compared between our original image that we were using and the work that was carrying that we actually gave that the developer is doing. Now, if we just go back to my little slide. So if you think about data comparison, compare data and structures, what data has actually changed, not look for what I think should have changed. I can't stress how important that is. The number of times that we've gone in and said, oh yeah, we're right, we've added an order. But if you actually do a comparison on the whole database, you'll find that there's maybe 3 or 4 other audit tables that have been populated, and maybe some kind of last access data has been updated as well. So if you really are interested in what your application is actually doing, that's a really good way. So you could use it for data discovery easily. You can basically use it to understand your own systems, and it's very rare you have a fully documented system. People are changing code all the time. So it's a really good way to just be able to kind of run a little application, run an API and see what actually happened. And this is another one. If you look at most automated frameworks, they will actually maybe cast a piece of SQL to see if something's ended up in a database. Whereas all you have to do is at the end, just actually do a diff of the database and you will get the actual results in a single place. And all you have to do is just go and look for those differences, which just saves you so much time. And also it's much more accurate rather than, because you've then got to rely on the tester to actually build the correct SQL to go and look in the right place and not miss anything. So that's kind of a critical thing. The next thing I'm talking about is solving data. I think I might have talked about this before, but I think it's a very powerful little beast. And this is working backwards from the desired results to the upstream test data. If you think anything to do with the numbers where you're trying to do some kind of calculation, where you're trying to get a final price or something like that, what you're trying to do is to work your way back up. So when would you use it? Save it time, having to create upstream data by hand. What you'll find is people will edit a document, hack a document, run it through. It'll get close. They'll change a few more numbers. They'll get a bit close. They'll get their calculator out. They'll put the data in a spreadsheet. They'll mess around, and eventually they'll get it right, but they wasted a ton of time. So the way that we do that is, again, I may have shown you this one before. This is just a little example of a credit rating message that comes through. Now, dependent on the variation of numbers, now this is a relatively small amount of numbers, but we've done this on tens of thousands of numbers, and it works absolutely fine. And what you're actually interested in are the profits, the dividends, and maybe the expenses. In terms of those are the core things that we care about from maybe a credit rating type approach. Now, all we really have to do is to go into lists, and we just create a little configuration file. And the configuration file is basically all you need to do is just say, what values do you, for each of the values in that message, just tell me the minimums and maximums. And then these are the calculations that we want. Now, some of them are actual physical calculations, and some of them are desired outcomes. So this one is, I want the dividend income statement to be 5% of the profit income statement. You can parameterize this up, and obviously you can do things like greater than, I want this thing to be greater than that. I want that thing to be greater than this, and you can sort of set bands between them. But that's actually pretty easy to set up, and we just give you a basic one. You start putting in the calculations, and then what you can do then is just come in here and say, let's go and have a look at some variations. And what I'm doing here is using the concepts of modeling. So I'm setting some basic values. If we go and look at those, you come in and see some basic values. Some of them I'm just putting in values I care about, but these are the ones that I want to be calculated. I'm also doing a little bit of variations in terms of low and high dividends, low expenditure, high expenditure, and I'm putting in some values. Now, these are kind of the expected values I want, and these are the variation. These are the columns. This is just telling the modeler that I'm actually going to mess around with these columns. And let's just see if I can find the job. Maybe this is it. Let's see if this is the one. Yeah. Now, all I have to do then is just fire off the job, and that has created for me a pack of data. Now, all of these numbers will add up to the desired total expenditures that I'm interested in. So I'm using a little bit of mathematics, I call linear algebra, and also you can see the profit income statements, and you can pin any one of these you like, and you can play around with them. So it's really, really easy to be able to do this. So if you've got any kind of calculations, then just get in touch. We'll have a quick look and help you kind of work towards getting, using this to create a much more interesting variety of input data. And the reason we want the variety is that we want massive variety in the actual data that's created out of the back end, any calculations, that you're going to be using for artificial intelligence, machine learning, credit rating, rule-based testing, those types of things. Okay, that's that one. And let's move on a little bit. Okay, so this is an interesting one. This is a bit of a blast from the past, this one. Validating implied relationships. If you look at, most databases will have some kind of foreign keys in them. And if you look at this sample commerce one, it's no different. You'll see that people have put in, so if you look at orders, for example, keys, foreign key order references, you'll see that it's built a check constraint, and this will actually be enforced by the database. Now, there is actually one wonderful thing you can do, which is do disable, which actually turns it off. Now, that's a very dangerous beast, because that will allow you to put data in without the database enforcing integrity. Now, what we can do, if we go into our data dictionary definition, and you look for let's go definitions, sample commerce, page 2. And if you come in here, you'll see that we've added in some foreign keys. And what I'm doing is I'm actually making sure, I'm just actually just checking. Oops, no, not that one. Sorry, wrong one. Let's go to customers and order, foreign keys. And yeah, so we're just setting up some dummy relationships between, so instead of them actually being real foreign keys, we've actually gone in and you can actually just add in your own relationships between them. Okay. Now, what you can also do then is just say, well, I've put in some relationships, and you'll see now any additional relationships that you add in, you can just say, go and validate that against a particular database. So I can basically check data relationships, click execute. And it'll say, tell me an actual physical machine that you want to check it against. And I could just go sample commerce HP2, fire that off. And what you'll get back is a validation that your interpretation of the data. So let's go and have a look at jobs over here. And look for check. Tech data relationships, and we will then just run this against any database. It's kind of a little bit like the comparison, but it's more focused on a specific business rule. And you can see actually in my database here, I'm testing country, referring table is country to the, so the country is the in effect, the foreign key table, the master table, and this is the child table. And we found actually all of them are incorrect. And that's actually, the reason we've done that is that we've actually masked the names of the countries using a random function just while we were testing some masking. And that's actually broken some relationships, which is a nice way of understanding it. This one is actually, what's happened is we put in a relationship between the first name and the ID, and this is a kind of a trick of being able to work out if someone's changed values between a before and after. And we've actually got two changes here, so someone's actually put some bad data in between a snapshot and what's actually happening. So it's a pretty simple thing to go in the product. All you have to do is just kind of add in new relationships. Just go in there, foreign keys, new soft foreign key, pick your schema, add the columns you're interested in, and here we have our relationships, and click on validate, and away you go, and you're validating the data inside your database. It's not a bad thing to do, just to kind of find bad data as well. We'll probably look to expand this as well with maybe some other stuff, because it sort of matches with some of the scanning we do for masking. So that's that one. Next one, data variations. What we've got is this concept of, if we look in lists, I'm just going to kind of show you. I think in the last one, I was talking a lot about, maybe not. I was talking about this idea of being able to look, to be able to hunt for data in aggregated aggregations of information about complex systems, where you're going to look at maybe customers and you find all the information out of customers, and then we were looking to improve the coverage. Now, in this particular case, what we've got is, this is actually from the Norwegian government, and it's just some synthetic data, but it's a good example because it kind of shows you, it's got loads and loads of dimensions in it. And typically what you would do is you'd go in and you say, well, I need to go find some data, and I'm going to go and look for, you know, search people list. And here I've got, and we're looking in the back end, I need 5 people, and I'm going to look for a particular status code, and I'm going to look to see length greater than 12 for long names, has special characters in the name, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of our version of being able to convert a search across a complex database to look for data. Now, what we've done is sort of turned that on its head. Well, actually, why don't we think about this in a little more sort of structured way? And what we can do then is kind of look for, and we can actually build a model out of a starter model. And here you can see we've got gender female, assignment male, and you know, we've basically played around with some of these values, and we can go to town on this, and you can basically just build up all the different variations that you care about. And what we have here is in effect a little, I've just gone off, I've actually used, give me an exhaustive set of variations. Each one of these variations is building a query against our list, and it's looking for the data to see if we do have any data that matches with that. So here we're looking for special codes 4, we're looking for females over the age of 56, over the age of 65. And what you'll see here is that we've actually got lots of not founds. And this comes out in a nice little report as well. I'm just showing you in Modeler, but it's actually giving you this the social security of number for this particular one, which is status code 1, minimum age 65, and no special characters in the name, etc. So it's kind of a structured way of being able to look for, and what you could think about is, if you think about the developers and testers and the queries that they're going to be asking for, if you model out all the different types of data that they care about, you can actually in effect convert that into a set of paths, and each path would be a potential request that you are likely to get from your developers and testers. And why don't we go and have a hunt around and see how good our data is. And then if the data doesn't exist in there, it's probably about 50% in this one, we may well look to say, well, we need to beef the data up. Maybe we want to do some synthetic data for, you know, we haven't got much in status code 5, for example, so let's go and create a whole bunch of data for that as well. So that means, you know, you're getting ahead of your data searches, and you're trying to be a bit more structured about it. Okay, that's I think that's me. There we go. Look systematically for data variations before you start. At the beginning of a sprint, or as an environment is prepared, you basically could just run this. And the idea is to get ahead of your data requests, and also think about coverage, especially if you're doing things like ETL transformations. You really do need to have a good variety of data in your test beds. Otherwise, as you know, as soon as you try and do it for live, it will fail because you found there's some data in there that you haven't really either designed properly, coded properly, or tested properly.